Good evening and welcome to this event of CIC. We promise to bring you achievers from various walks of life, and today we are honored to present before this audience a young achiever, a very young, inspiring achiever, Kamya. Kaamya Karthikeyan is an extraordinary young adventurer, a mountaineer, and she is currently just 17 years old. She is pursuing her education at NCS Mumbai. She is the second youngest girl in the world to climb Mount Everest from Nepal and holds the title of the youngest girl to conquer six of the seven summits, including the highest peaks in South America, North America, and Europe. With an adventurous spirit from a young age, Kamya has achieved remarkable feats such as being the youngest person to ski from the top of Mount Elbrus, Europe's highest peak, and summiting Mount Stock, Kangri, at the age of 9. I think that really deserves a big round of applause. She has received numerous accolades, including the Pradhan Mantri Rashtriya Bal Shakti Puraskar, and has been recognized by the Honorable Prime Minister in Mann Ki Baat. Her future ambitions include completing the Explorer's Grand Slam, which involves scaling the highest peaks on all seven continents and skiing to both the North and South Poles. Alongside her mountaineering endeavors, she is a well rounded individual with a passion for long distance running, scuba diving, Bharatanatyam, and public speaking at a national level. Driven by her vision to showcase the outdoors as a pathway for a focused life and to inspire India's youth, Kamya is not only a role model but also an ambassador for the Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao initiative. A big hand, ladies and gentlemen, for Kamya Karthikeyan. Accompanying her is an illustrious family. Her mother is here, her father is here. Commander Karthikeyan is a career submariner. So, from the bottom of the seas to the top of the world, I think he's seen it all. He is currently stationed at Mumbai, looks after the construction of Kalvari class submarines. In his 27 years of uniformed service, he has served in many crucial roles and ensures our sovereignty. Apart from his work, he has inspired today's speaker to dream of the mountains through his climbing escapades to many peaks in India. We welcome both of you. Please, the floor is all yours now.
Thank you, sir, and thank you everyone for giving me this wonderful opportunity to speak with all of you today. It is truly a pleasure to be here. My journey with the mountains began a long time ago when I was still on a baby sling, and for as long as I can remember, I tagged along with my parents on small trails in the picturesque Lonavala, which is the lap of the Sahyadris. I could initially only crawl up these trails, which subsequently turned into baby steps and created deep impressions on my mind. Missing my dad, who used to go on expeditions in the Himalayas, I would often ask my mom, why does dad go to the mountains? And thus began my journey with the mighty mountains. Over the next few years, I did many beautiful treks in the Himalayas with my mother, venturing on trails like Chandrashila Peak, Harkidun with my family and friends when I was 8 years old, and a back to back trek to Kedarkanta Peak to test my endurance. Rupkund, which was my first high altitude trek in October 2018. It was also my first Himalayan trek with my hero, my dad. Many more Himalayan treks followed in the next few years, like Brighu Lake and Sherpas in the summer of 2019. After gaining some experience in the Indian Himalayas, in May 2017, I traveled to Nepal and had an opportunity to seek an audience with Mount Everest or Sagar Mata as I undertook the Everest Base Camp trek. After 7 tough days of trekking, we reached the biggest base camp in the world and I had my first rendezvous with Sagar Mata. We unfolded the tricolor at the base camp and I made a promise to the mountain to return again and to climb all the way up to the summit the next time. With the experience gained and more confidence in my abilities, we traveled to Ladakh in August of 2017 to climb my first 6,000 meter plus peak, Mount Stoke Kangri. Earlier in 2012, I had traveled to the roadhead of this mountain to see off my father when he had first attempted it. At that time, I had asked him when he thought I could climb, and after 5 years of hard work and training, I was on the summit of the peak in the morning hours of 7th August 2017, just 3 days short of my 10th birthday. And I became the youngest girl in the world to climb a peak above 6,000 meters. It was definitely not an easy climb. The summit push itself lasted a continuous 19 hours. But it was in the foothills of this mountain, on returning from the summit, that my mission was born. And that's a story for the question and answer if someone's interested. But Mission Sahas is my endeavor, like Sir said, to complete the Explorer's Grand Slam. The Explorer's Grand Slam is a challenge to climb the highest peaks in each of the 7 continents and to ski to the North and South Poles. It's no mean feat by any measure. Only 75 mountaineers have completed it till date, of which only 14 are women. I aim to become the youngest ever to accomplish the feat, and the current title for the same is held by a 21-year-old Japanese climber. I set out on my first milestone of Mission Sahas, Mount Kilimanjaro, the highest peak in Tanzania, Africa, in October 2017. After 4 tough days of trekking through varied terrains, we finally reached Gilman's Point on the crater rim of the dormant volcano and the world's highest freestanding mountain. I had reached the roof of Africa at just 10 years of age. Next on the list was Mount Elbrus in Russia, the highest peak of Europe. After a cold and tough climb, we finally summited the peak on 14th June 2018 and completed my second of the 7 summits. It was special to be standing on the summit as a family just a day after my parents' 15th wedding anniversary. Not just that, I also skied down from the summit of Mount Elbrus, becoming the youngest ever to do so. Can you believe that I had to climb the peak wearing snowboarding shoes, sit on the summit and change into skiing shoes, and then ski down the mountain? Third on the list was Mount Kosciuszko, the highest in Australia, which again was a mom and daughter affair. Kosciuszko is not a very high peak and it's only a 1 day hike to the summit and back. But unfortunately, we faced extremely high winds when we were on the mountain. Nevertheless, we reached the summit and on 23rd October 2018 became the only people to summit on that day. Now, with the third of the 7 summits completed, the next aim was to climb Mount Aconcagua, the highest peak in South America. Now, although Mount Aconcagua is not a very technical peak, it stands tall at almost 7,000 meters, making the altitude a very important defining factor in the outcome of any expedition. Its location way south of the equator, as well as its proximity to the Pacific shores, make it susceptible to a lot of extreme weather conditions and high winds. Additionally, we would have to tackle extremely chilling temperatures, and with a success rate of only 30 to 35%, many who attempt the peak are forced to turn back and return. All this meant that I needed to train further and train much harder. So we traveled again to my favorite playground, Leh, to climb Mount Mentor Kangri, my second 6,000 meter plus peak. I summited this peak on 24th August 2019 at just 12 years of age. Now, with a successful climb on this mountain, assuring my preparedness, we were confident of taking on the challenges of Mount Aconcagua. But when we reached Argentina, we had to face a whole different battle even before we stepped foot on the mountain. Due to changes in the Argentinian legal system, we had to fight a case in their family court just to obtain a permit. After almost 2 weeks of fighting relentlessly, we finally received our permits and left on the climb. Even though we were climbing strong, our guides were extremely cynical about taking such a young climber on the mountain right from the beginning. And so we faced our next big challenge on the 11th day of our expedition as we were climbing to our summit camp. Being a windy day, my hands were getting cold, so we stopped a couple of times to warm them up and to change into warmer gloves. The guides took advantage of this and claimed that I was showing signs of high altitude mountain sickness, turning us back around all the way to base camp. Despite repeated claims that I was doing fine, they pushed us to come back to base camp. But on the way down, I picked up courage and told my dad that we weren't coming down because of our own shortcomings, but rather because of someone else's misjudgment of me. That gave him the confidence to reason out with our expedition operator and get me another chance to prove my grit. So when I was given that second chance, I gave it everything I had. and we reached the summit on the 1st of February 2020, my fourth of the 7 summits completed. I also became the youngest girl in the world to have climbed this peak at just 12 years of age. Thank you. During the next 2 years of COVID restrictions, we had to keep our focus, discipline, and continue to train hard. Finally, in June of 2022, we set out on my fifth of the 7 summits, Mount Denali, the highest peak in North America. Located in the remote state of Alaska, this is rated as one of the toughest climbs of the 7 summits. A small aircraft with specialized ski landing gear takes climbers to the Kahiltna Glacier from where our expedition begins. Since there are no porters on this mountain, we had to carry not only our 20 kg backpacks but also pull a 50 kg sledge with our equipment, food, clothing, and fuel for the entire 20-day expedition. Here are a few glimpses of our beautiful yet challenging and extremely dangerous journey. The mountain was full of deep crevasses, like you can see on the slide here, as well as steep slopes where we had to drag our heavy sledges. Ironically, it was even more difficult to get the sledges down these slopes than it was to lug them up. You'd be surprised to know that this picture was taken at 11:30 in the night. Being so close to the Arctic Circle, the sun hardly sets for 2 hours every single day on Denali. This is the view of the summit from Camp 4. What seems so very close on the picture took us of almost a week just to climb and get back. There were a few stretches of the climb that were quite literally on the edge, and we had inched forward through 5 camps and finally set out on our summit push. But before we could have an audience with the summit, we had to encounter a sharp knife ridge that you see on the slide here, which came after almost nearly 8 hours of climbing. You can see that there's a huge mass of ice at the very top of this slide, just waiting to dislodge itself and fall down at any given moment. After a long and tough climb, we finally reached the summit of the 6,190-meter high Mount Denali on 27 June 2022 and completed my fifth of the 7 summits at just 14 years of age. With this, eyes were set on the next adventure, Mount Everest, and a rigorous 2-year-long sojourn began. Before I move on, I'd like to invite my climbing partner to join me on stage. Daru, could you please come up?
Good evening, everyone, and it's a pleasure to join the young aspiring climber here today to speak to all of you. Climbing a mountain like Mount Everest is a very serious endeavor. One has to be Everest ready, that's how we call it. Otherwise, they are going to be danger to themselves and to the climbers around them. So you have to be physically strong, mentally prepared, logistically ready, and that's when you are Everest ready.
To hone my technical skills, I underwent the basic mountaineering course at the National Institute of Mountaineering and Allied Sports in Arunachal Pradesh in April 2021.
And we had to constantly train ourselves to keep up our physical strength, which included endurance training, and running was the best option.
We also took to the trails whenever and wherever we could find them, which became especially more convenient because we were so close to the Sahyadris.
And when we could not hit the trails, we climbed stairs in the concrete jungle of Mumbai. Getting acclimatized to the cold of the mountains was part of the training, and Gulmarg became our annual pilgrimage. We have trained in Gulmarg for the last 10 years, almost every year.
Earlier this year, I had the opportunity to participate in the Khelo India Winter Games and was privileged to win a gold and a bronze medal in the ski mountaineering events. I believe that it is our training regimen in Gulmarg that has ranked in all of these results.
For actual training on the mountains, we headed out to our favorite playground again, Ladakh, and we went on to climb Mount Chhe 1 in September last year, a very technical peak at 6,401 meters.
As you can see on the screen, the trails went through many beautiful and unique segments and landscapes. We also climbed extremely steep slopes with long and never-ending technical sections. But all our efforts paid off when we reached the summit of Mount Mentor Kangri on 11th September 2023 and completed my fifth peak above 6,000 meters.
With the success on Mount Chhe 1 and all our previous training endeavors, we now believe that we were ready for Mount Everest. Alongside all the physical and mental preparedness, the expedition to Mount Everest is a 2-month long expedition, and it requires very, very detailed logistic preparation. Getting the right equipment, finding the right operator, planning the long itinerary, choosing the best suited food. The list is never ending. And it's very important to do this because there have been times when expeditions had to turn back from summit camp just for the want of a matchstick. So that's the level to which the detailing goes down while preparing for expedition like Mount Everest.
With all of these preparations done, we landed in Kathmandu on 3rd of April this year, and with blessings from Lord Pashupati, started our expedition on the 6th of April.
The expedition can be broadly classified into 3 parts. First is the approach, then the acclimatization phase, and then the summit push. In the approach phase, climbers land at Lukla and trek to the Everest base camp, a temporary village between 3,250 to 3,350 meters, which stretches about 1.7 kilometers long.
So climbers fly from Kathmandu to Lukla, which is a small and precariously situated airstrip, and then trek along various temporary settlements as well as villages before finally reaching the Everest base camp.
On the mountain, there are 4 camps beyond the base camp, camp 1, 2, 3 and 4, before we set out on the summit. Climbers regularly climb high each camp and acclimatize their body in various rotations on the mountain so that the body learns to live with the rarefied atmosphere which is there.
With all the good preparations and loads of good wishes, we started out our expedition from Lukla on the 6th of April this year. The trek winds along the beautiful Dudh Koshi river, which originates from Everest. I had a few nostalgic moments recreating pictures across the hanging bridges back from my trek in 2017. We also had some gifts to deliver. Earlier, when I had traveled to the Everest base camp in 2017, I was really surprised and touched to see that the Sherpa children used to walk to school every single day in the same terrain where we were just climbing once and had trained so much for that. So I wanted to do something to help them. With the help of Naval Kindergarten, Fly Dubai, and our expedition operator, we were able to gift a good 50 pair of shoes to students of the Sir Edmund Hillary School, which is in the remote village of Khumjung. It was especially heartening to see the smiles on their beautiful faces. After 8 days of trekking, we finally reached our base camp on the 13th of April.
And this campsite, sitting on top of a moving mass of ice, was going to be our home for the next 2 months. Next day was the puja ceremony, which we bring in all our climbing equipment, and a Buddhist Lama comes and blesses all of us and the equipment, seeking safe passage into the mountain to the summit and back. You can see all the climbing gear lined in front of the puja ceremony, and offerings ranging from Coke to Sprite to the high spirits, whatever is there in the mountains.
The next day was spent training in the ice pinnacles near our camp. The training to cross huge crevasses over ladders was a first for me, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
And once we were comfortable at the base camp, we headed out for our first rotation to climb Mount Labuche East, a 6,119 meter high peak in the Everest region. And once we went to the summit camp, we started the summit push the same day in the night at around 11:30.
The summit push on Mount Labuche East ended up being much more difficult than we'd expected. Due to the lack of fresh snow, we had to walk on hard ice or solid rock on crampons. But we braved through all of these challenges, and finally at 8:40 on the 18th of April, we reached the tricky summit of Mount Labuche East, which could only accommodate 2 or 3 people at any given moment. And I had climbed my sixth peak above 6,000 meters.
After the summit of Mount Labuche East, we were back in base camp, ready to prepare and make ourselves mentally prepared for the second rotation on the mountain. On 22nd of April, we headed out into the much feared Kumbu Icefall, which we were going to traverse many more times during the coming days. We headed out into the Kumbu Icefall, which is a big mass of moving ice of all the snow that accumulates in the Everest region down the Everest valley. So it has a lot of crevasses, very precarious looking structures called seracs, which can fall anytime when the climbers are traversing through the Kumbu Icefall. So we climbed up halfway through the Kumbu Icefall, reached about 5,800 meters, and then came back to base camp.
But I wouldn't say that the climb through the icefall was scary for us. It was definitely mystic and very serene, but probably our training and preparedness had helped in making it a less daunting challenge for us.
The Kumbu Icefall makes the stark difference between climbing Everest from the Nepal side or from the Tibet side. And that's one of the scenes that you get to see when you are traversing the Kumbu Icefall.
On rest days and bad weather days, we had briefings on the very important oxygen system. We also got to train on the pinnacles with our oxygen masks as well as cylinders to get used to the entire system.
The next day on the rotation, up the mountain, we climbed to Camp 1 and the Kumbu Icefall revealed itself in all its glory. You can see the length and width of the crevasses that don the Kumbu Icefall. Some of these crevasses could be as deep as 50 meters and the gaps could be as wide as 30 to 40 meters, and they are crossed on ladders that have been placed across them by the Sherpa community. And if you think that's the view that we enjoy all the time throughout the climb, this is actually what the climber sees when he's on the mountain, clipped onto his rope. All your focus narrows down, bringing your tunnel vision into life rather than your wide angle vision. So this is what climbers generally see when they are climbing up the mountain.
And that is Camp 1 for all of you. The tiny yellow dots lining the edge of the vast snowscape that we call the Western Kumb.
The journey continued to Camp 2 the next day. This time the crevasses only grew larger and more precarious. In this picture you can see climbers trying to find their way through naturally formed snow bridges, which are gateways to cross large crevasses without the requirement of ladders that are tied together. And these snow bridges can collapse any time, swallowing the climbers into their abyss with not much notice.
The next day we had a much needed rest day at Camp 2 and we played many games of chess. It was interesting to see how our brain was functioning suboptimally because of the high altitude compared to even just base camp.
The next day we left Camp 2 towards Camp 3. Camp 3 is set up at a height of 7,000 meters. So the aim was to climb somewhere around 6,800 to 7,000 meters till the time the sun hits the Lhotse phase. The route from Camp 2 to Camp 3 has a big ice wall called the Lhotse phase, which is a very, very long and strenuous wall to climb. So aim was to climb, reach a point where the sun hits you, because beyond that point, a lot of rocks and big chunks of ice get dislodged from the mountain and gets hurled on climbers. It could hit you like what missiles could hit anybody. So to avoid them, you climb till the sun comes up and then you come down.
So we walked for about 4 hours to reach the base of the Lhotse face and then climbed up for another hour before we turned back and came down to Camp 2. The next day we walked back directly from Camp 2 to base camp, and our bodies had now completely acclimatized to the altitude.
I would request everybody to remember that 4 hours and 1 hour from Camp 2 to the bottom of the climb and 1 hour onto the climb.
After the rotation, we came down to a village called Pangboche, which is at the tree line. This is a common practice on peaks like Everest because there is much more oxygen at the tree line, which makes recovery much more convenient for climbers.
After 4 days of recovery at Pangboche, we got back to base camp in time for a summit push. Before we set off from the base camp, we were each assigned our personal Sherpas. They are friends for the next couple of days, maybe a week, who would be our shadow and our breath all through the climb. That's the closeness that you develop with the Sherpas.
We also had a recap on the various high altitude sicknesses that climbers could face and how to tackle them, as well as a briefing on each of our individual oxygen usage strategies and a briefing on the route beyond Camp 3, which we had not yet seen.
With good preparation and loads of good wishes, we set out on our final summit push on the 16th of May. And unlike the acclimatization rotation, we found large traffic jams right at the beginning of Kumbu Icefall.
After a rest day at Camp 2, we moved up to Camp 3. This was an especially exciting day because it was the first day we were using our oxygen system on an actual climb. I was feeling strong and reached Camp 3 in about 3.5 hours.
Just to give you a perspective, if you remember, she told that she took 4 hours to walk from Camp 2 to the bottom of the Lhotse face and then 1 hour of climb up the Lhotse face before the sun hit her. Now, we had walked the same distance from Camp 2 to the bottom of Lhotse face in about 2 hours and reached Camp 3 in about another 1.5 hours. That is what acclimatization in the mountain does to your body. It lets you adapt to live with less oxygen and gives you the confidence to climb. And the supplementary oxygen did help. From Camp 3 onwards, we had to wear oxygen masks even when you are sleeping in the tent, albeit at a little lower rate of flow of oxygen.
The next day, we walked from Camp 3 to Camp 4. We had to face extremely high winds and constant whiteouts like you can see on this video. With low visibility and very adverse conditions, a lot of climbers turned back, but we braved through the bad weather and finally reached Camp 4. It was definitely one of the toughest days of the expedition for all of us. We were supposed to rest at Camp 4 for a few hours and then begin our summit climb at around 9:30 in the night to reach the summit around daybreak. But when nightfall came, the winds were still extremely high and we could barely even get out of our tents. After waiting till about 1:30 in the morning in hopes that the weather would get better, we slept off thinking that we could now go up only the next day. But at 3:30 in the morning, our Sherpas woke us up and said that we were going on the summit now. We were extremely surprised because such a late summit is absolutely unheard of on Everest.
And to give an idea of what staying in Camp 4 is feeling like, it's an out of the world experience. It's like being in outer space with everybody moving around wearing a puffed down suit with oxygen mask and everybody holding an oxygen cylinder in their hand. So in that kind of a condition, to set out on a very, very new kind of summit climb, instead of starting at 7:30 in the night, starting at 4:30 in the morning, it was a very, very difficult proposition, but we had to take the call.
My dad even tried to radio the expedition operator and ask if he would allow us to go up the next day, to which he replied no, because there would be a line of almost 200 plus people who had descended back to Camp 3 the previous day who would now be coming up to Camp 4, and he didn't want us getting stuck in that much traffic. But even though we set out on the climb with a lot of double thoughts, we got displaced from each other, and my dad got stuck in some extremely bad weather. We braved through all of these challenges to stand on the highest point of the earth in the afternoon of 20th of May 2024. It was a dream of many years coming true for both of us. And I had become the youngest Indian and the second youngest girl in the world to have climbed Mount Everest from the Nepal side. Although we couldn't get a very clear view from the summit, it was definitely a very special moment for us.
The entire 8.5 hours of climb from Camp 4 to the summit, we almost had whiteout like this. There were times when I could not see 2 feet ahead of me, and Kamya was 45 minutes ahead of me. So we didn't know what was happening to her. She wouldn't know whether I'm even continuing on the climb or have I gone back to Camp 4. So those were the kind of things that go on in your mind more than what your body experiences. And that's what is climbing Everest is all about, not just a physical endeavor. And not to make you miss what the actual scene at the summit looks like, we borrowed a video from a co-climber who climbed the next day, and that's the summit of Everest for you, the best that you can see.
Although we didn't have a great view from the summit, we were rewarded for a climb well done with a beautiful sunset as we were climbing back down to Camp 4 and then further to Camp 2 the same day. With my previous climbs, I also hold the records for being the youngest girl in the world to summit Mount Aconcagua, the youngest girl in the world to climb a peak above 6,000 meters, and the youngest person in the world to ski down from the summit of Mount Elbrus. In recognition of my mountaineering achievements, I was honored with the Pradhan Mantri Shakti Puraskar in 2021, the highest award for citizens below the age of 18. When we had our virtual interaction with the Honorable Prime Minister, he told all of us awardees that this award should only act as a stepping stone to even more success in the future, which is something I promise to remember and follow always.
The road ahead for Kamya is not easy. In December this year, she plans to climb the highest peak in Antarctica, Mount Vinson Massif, and ski to the South Pole.
This would leave the North Pole as the final challenge to complete the Explorer's Grand Slam. If I complete this challenge in 2025, at the age of 17, I would be the youngest ever to accomplish the feat.
And Kamya has also been selected to represent our country in the forthcoming Winter Asian Games in China this coming February in a ski mountaineering event, which is a new event in the skiing ambit, which is going to be added in the Olympics in 2026 Winter Olympics as well.
Before I end, I would request all of you to follow my journey on my social media and keep encouraging us and praying for us. Lastly, my dad has always said that we should climb mountains to collect stories, stories that we can tell our grandkids when we retire at an old age. Well, I've had a bit of a head start and don't want to wait till 60 or 70. So thank you everyone once again for being a wonderful audience to my story. And I hope it spreads the joy and spirit of adventure in everyone present here. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Hello, sir. Hello, ma'am. I'm a medical professional, and this is probably the most unbelievable thing I've heard in my life with respect to how a body takes over you. And this is all I have is questions, but I'll try to restrict within two. Again, as a person who studies about this, and I wanted to ask a couple of questions about. You mentioned a lot about a technical climb and a non-technical climb, and you mentioned those words, and the technicalities of a climb. What is the difference between a technical climb and non-technical climb? That will be one. And you also mentioned about climbing the Everest from the Tibet side, and the sorry, you climbed it from the Nepal side, ma'am. And you can climb it from the Tibet side also. What would be the differences between that?
Do you want to answer the first one?
And if possible, probably an additional question: how did you manage school? This is kind of a revelation because we tried to balance something within our city and it was too difficult for us. How did you manage school? Very simple. Thank you so much.
So I'll give perspectives from both sides, from my side and from her side later. You can hear from her. Uh, yes, the difference between, for the first question, the difference between technical and non-technical climb is pretty simple. A non-technical climb is where you don't need any gear. You don't need ropes. You don't need carabiners to tie yourself to the rope. You don't need a harness. You don't need spikes under your boots. If you saw the video where we were climbing down the ladder, you could see two spikes jutting out from our boot. You don't need any of those. They are pretty straightforward climbs where the routes are little more
Simpler.
nicer on you, and the dangers are slightly lesser. So the mountain that she climbed in 2017, Mount Stoke Kangri, it was at that time called as the Everest of trekkers, where every trekker with the confidence and with the determination to climb a peak could go and climb without having formal introduction to mountaineering in an institute. So that's a non-technical climb for you. Of course, even there, as the altitude grows, you need to have knowledge about what happens in your body and how your body would react, where to say no, where to stop, where to turn back. Those are the most important things which you need to know. So, but as far as classification goes, that's the difference between a technical and a non-technical peak. You could see the amount of gear that we were carrying when we were preparing for Everest, when we were packing for Everest. So a technical climb has all that, and there are 6 institutes in our country which impart technical mountaineering education. Unlike, I don't think even the Alps has got so many institutes imparting technical mountaineering education. So we are actually blessed to be here in India with so much of Himalayas in our backyard, and there are 6 institutes which do that. So people go there, do their basic mountaineering course, get more knowledge in advanced mountaineering course as to how to organize an expedition, and then what you do is the technical climb. So that's the first one.
And then to talk about the difference from the Nepal side and the Tibet side, there are different factors that go into each climb. With the Nepal side, the approach to the base camp itself takes about 8 days, whereas on the Tibet side, you can drive up to the base camp. There's a road that leads up to about 5,500 meters, which is the base camp. And again, like we said, on the Nepal side, we have the Kumbu Icefall, which is one of the most dangerous sections of the climb from the south side. And on the Nepal side, on the Tibet side, sorry, you can walk up to your advanced base camp in normal trekking shoes. So again, the climb till the advanced base camp is non-technical. But one of the major challenges on the Tibet side is that your highest camp is at 8,300 or 8,400 meters, whereas on the Nepal side, the last camp is at 7,900 meters. And on the Tibet side, you also have 3 vertical ladders which are on your summit camp, on your summit push, sorry. So above 8,000 meters with your oxygen on, and at that kind of high altitude, you have to climb those 3 vertical ladders. So there's different challenges on either side of the mountain.
So it's a very, very ongoing debate as to which is easier or which is more difficult, which can not be answered in simple subjective or objective terms, because from the data that she told, what emerges is that the advanced base camp in Tibet side, it's sorry for the language, it's called the yak shit camp, because yaks literally walk till the advanced base camp. So the amount of logistics becomes easier to reach there. Whereas on the Nepal side, everything is lugged on Sherpas. So the humans have to carry all the logistics up in the mountain. So that makes it a little more easier to organize from the Chinese side and from the Tibet side, of course. And as she told, you are going to be sleeping at a higher camp on the Tibet side. At 8,400 meters, you're going to be sleeping a night. Whereas on the Nepal side, the last camp is at 8,000 meters. But of course, after having climbed, I don't think it makes a difference because we hardly slept. And I'm sure if we were climbing from the Tibet side also, we would have hardly slept that night. The climb from Camp 3 started at 3 in the morning from 6,950 meters. It went on till 6:30 in the evening to reach Camp 4. We were supposed to rest and leave at 9:30, which we did not rest, neither did we leave. So we kept hanging in anxiety till 1:30 in the night, and she probably slept for 2 hours. I didn't sleep, and 3:30 we were again woken up, and we continued climbing to the summit. Reached summit around 12:40. I reached around 2:10, and we started walking back and reached Camp 2 the next day morning at 1:30 and slept at 3:30. So it was 48 hours in which I had not slept and she had slept for 2 hours. So I'm sure from the Tibet side also it would be the same. So 8,000, 8,400 wouldn't make much of a difference. But yes, there are a lot of differences. But the main reason why we chose to climb from Nepal is because there is an age limit to climb from Nepal, which is 16. And there was no age limit to climb from Tibet earlier, but right now the age limit is 18. So we couldn't wait for 2 more years. That probably was one of the main reasons we chose to climb from the Nepal side.
And again, about the academics, it was definitely a big challenge, especially with a climb like Everest, where I was gone from school for about 2 months, and I am in 12th standard now, so it's definitely a challenge. But I think mountaineering, more than anything, has taught me a lot of focus and discipline, and it's taught me to prioritize. And I've always known that if I wanted to continue climbing, I'd have to do decently well in my academics. So I think when those priorities were set straight, it definitely helps you focus and give time for everything that you want. And of course, I've had a good support system as well in terms of my school and the teachers that I've had. So I'm thankful that they've been understanding and able to help wherever they can.
And actually, we are not looking at mountaineering as a career option. It could be a career option in the future, but we are actually looking at it as a character building tool, like any other sport is. Once you are into it and you're performing at that level and you do things which you think otherwise in your life are not humanly possible, then everything becomes possible in future. You could stay up till 3 in the morning and study, get up at 5 and again study and go for an exam and still not sleep, like what I did when I was in my 12th standard. So that's the kind of things that the as mountaineering has done to Kamya, and I think that is helping her to pull along well. It's certainly not to brag. We were in the Kumbu region from the 6th of April till 26th of April, 50 days in the mountains.
26th
And 26th of May, sorry, 50 days in the Kumbu region. We walked back, reached Kathmandu, and then flew into Jamshedpur, met our biggest sponsor, the Tata Steel Adventure Foundation, and reached Mumbai on the night of 31st of May, and 1st June she went and gave her SAT exam. And she scored decently well, score in SAT as well. So it is possible. You know, the popular belief that sports and academics don't go together is not true.
So, like I was saying, it just requires a little bit of extra focus. So, when we'd come down to Chhe for our oxygen holiday or for the break just before we went on the summit, I had to sit there and study a bit for the exam as well. But I think that kind of extra work can be done to help manage both.
Did you guys fall sick on any of your ascents, and what happened?
God willing, we've been very safe. And that's actually one of the important factors that you need to manage when you're on a expedition, not to fall sick.
Especially on a climb like Everest, where there are at least 400 climbers on the mountain and you're near them for almost 2 months. So there's a lot of strict rules. A lot of people fall sick in the Kumbu Valley, and there's especially a sickness called the Kumbu cough, which is very harsh and can destroy people's expedition. So even a small fever can be very detrimental at that kind of altitude when you're undertaking that kind of physical exhaustion. So even at base camp, we weren't allowed to move much out of our own camp or go mingle with other teams, especially when we know that they may be sick or they may be down with a fever. So we go to a lot of lengths to make sure that we're completely safe when we're on the climb.
On one of the videos, I heard somebody coughing.
Yeah.
So it's not falling sick. What actually happens is you are breathing in air at minus 40 degrees. So it actually makes your throat absolutely dry. So without the lining of mucus in your throat, even if you breathe in air, the air touches your nerves in the throat, and that's what is coming out as cough. Actually, they are not sick. Kumbu cough could be actually lethal. It could actually break your ribs by just you coughing. So it's a super bug. Kumbu cough is a super bug. There are not many known remedies. You'll have to just come down the mountain and rest. And it's not that we have been free of sickness or the vagaries of the mountain. I have had a frostbite. I have lost about 5 mm of my finger. Even the smallest mistake could mean serious damage to you. So that's what keeps us going back to the mountains for. It gives you the adrenaline rush.
Why do the summits begin only in the middle of the night or in the evening?
So the main reason is so that because the summit usually lasts anywhere between 8 to 12 hours for you to get to the summit, and then you need to come back. So you try to cover most of it in the dark, because once the sun comes up, it's going to start melting the ice, and that can result. Firstly, it's very inconvenient to walk when the ice is melting and slushy, and number two, it can also increase the risk of avalanche. So you try to cover most of your expedition or climb during the night, especially on an important day like the summit when you're walking for a longer time.
So what you do actually is you set up a summit camp at such a place from where you could use all your energy to just go reach the summit and come back to the summit camp. That avoids you setting up the summit camp any higher than what you need to. So when you need to cover that much of distance, you need to have that much of time. And when you start in the night, you hit the summit when the sun is just coming up, and then you have enough time to come back. On the mountains, the weather packs up every day around 2 in the evening. So by 2 3 you aim to come back to the tent. And if some exigency comes, you still have some time to come out of it when there is light, because once the light goes down, uh, the world changes in the mountains.
I just have a comment to make. I first saw Kamya when she was 10, was it 9 or 10
9.
years old at Stoke Kangri. I had gone up with a team of climbers and we had reached the base camp. And we were wandering around in the campsite, and there's a huge tea tent in the middle of the campsite. And we walked in to get some tea, and my friend and I saw this little girl sitting by herself playing some video games. And we were like two mother hens, and we said, "What is this child doing by herself? It's not so safe to be alone in this huge." It's a summit. I mean, the Stoke base camp is vast. So we went up to her and said, "What are you doing here by yourself? Where are your parents?" So she says to us, we summited Stoke Kangri this morning, and they were walking very slow, so I ran down the mountain and came back. So that was my first time I met this little girl, and I'm so proud to see all that she has achieved now.
Thank you, ma'am.
And I must confess, it was in the same Stoke base that the idea of climbing the highest peak on each of the continents came into us. Like you said, we were trailing, and I was accompanying my wife. My wife Lavanya is also here, and most of the credit of what Kamya has done today should go to her, because if not for her, Kamya's trekking.
Can we have you up on stage?
So Kamya's trekking escapades wouldn't have even started. When I was climbing mountains and Kamya had so many questions about the mountains, it was Lavanya who actually braved to take her on a Himalayan trek, and that's how it all started. And on Stoke Kangri, many of you might not believe, Kamya has long hair, and I was just not confident or capable of maintaining her hair in the mountains. And that was the only reason I requested my wife to accompany us to the Stoke base camp so that she could take care of Kamya's hair. And once she was there in the base camp, she told that, Karthik, I'm feeling fine. I have gone to the advanced base camp with you guys today, and I think I can try and summit if you would let me. And we told, okay, why not? You're here already and you're not finding yourself in a difficult spot. Let's try. So we went on the summit climb, and halfway towards the summit climb, again, Stoke is also a little longish summit. It takes about 1500 meters to climb to the summit from the base camp, and in one go. So halfway through the summit, she told, I'm finished. I'm not going any further from here. And you duped me to get me here. And this is a absolute sadish. I don't know. It's not like that. It's okay. You've already come here, and from here it's just going to take another 1 hour to reach the summit. You don't know. You are lying to me, and I know this now. By now, I know this that you're lying to me. I told her that, see, you've come here. Kamya is with us. She's braved all this and climbed till now. The sun is up. The cold is gone. If you turn back now, imagine what's going to happen to her. It's going to affect her mind, and she's going to find it difficult to climb. And kudos to her. She continued climbing, and we summited in another 3.5 hours from then. And they hugged each other, cried, everything over, and we were walking back. And as I told, the ice has started to melt. It was slushy. And Kamya, since she was small and she didn't have much body weight, was cruising down, sliding in many of the slopes. And we were finding it difficult to come. And I was coming along with Lavanya. We reached the base camp almost an hour and a half late after Kamya had reached. And we entered the same dining tent, and Kamya was sitting there. She was eating Maggie and she was solving Sudoku. So I asked Kamya, Kamya, do you realize that you have climbed higher than the highest peak in 4 continents? There are no peaks higher than this in 4 of the continents, and you've just climbed it and come, and you're sitting and solving Sudoku. And the first thing she asked was, Dadu, can we climb the other 3 as well? So that's where the idea of the 7 summits actually was born. It was not to break some records or make some records. So it was just an idea that came in that Stoke camp, and it's carried us this far, and I'm sure it'll have many more to come. And I should also say, Vidya ma'am has been an inspiration. At this age, she's climbed Mentor Kangri 2 a few days before, and I know how difficult the climb is. So kudos to you. And just like how Kamya could be inspiration for many from the young generation to do big things, I'm sure you are inspiration for people like us to keep fit till where you are and do things that you're doing.
One more little interesting snippet. I mean, this is nothing to do with this climb. We were at Namche Bazaar, which is the entry point to a lot of the treks in Nepal. And we were staying at a little hotel, which is owned by a gentleman called Kancha Sherpa. Now, he's 92 years old. He is the last living survivor of Edmund Hillary's trek team.
Yeah.
So it was extraordinary to meet him. We took his blessings, and it was, I think, the high point of that trek.
And in fact, I should mention here, somebody asked me what's it between the Navy and climbing mountains. They are nowhere connected. The first Indian Everest expedition to succeed was in 1965, and it was headed by a naval captain, Captain M.S. Kohli, and he was the leader of the expedition, where the Indian flag was first time put on the summit of Everest. And what an interesting personality he is. He's just turned 90, and we have had the opportunity to meet him thrice. And things like that gave us the inspiration and motivation to keep going. He would remember the name of every single man that he has climbed with, from the Sherpa to the loader to the porter, who had helped him climb mountains, and what kind of stories that he had. And in fact, that's where the idea struck me, that you should have stories that you should assimilate in the mountains, which you can share with people.
Okay, this question is for Kamya. Now that you have been climbing from your childhood, so there must be certain points at which you had to make your own decisions. So how did you do it? Did it happen naturally, or were you guided by your parents, or you already had that kind of a maturity where you were able to take decisions on your own and be independent. And sir, to you, I mean, in these kind of situations, how does your parental instinct work? I mean, just to let go and without knowing that where she is and how she is doing, and that is there a dilemma? Is there a like a tension or a psychological effect which happens? There's another question also. This is about the Alaskan peak which you talked about, where you were not having any support system or stuff like that. So then, how tough was it and how difficult was it compared to, the Everest summit? And third and last, there's just a statement, just imagining that 71 years before to this date, the Everest was first, summited by Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay. So, what could be the the differences or challenges that they might have had compared to the modern system that is prevalent there with so much of information and state of the art gadgets and technical equipments?
So I'll just start. I think thankfully I've always been able to climb with my parents, which has definitely helped. And we have had to face a lot of challenges along the way, especially because I was a young climber. And on Denali, the reason we didn't have guides was because there's only 7 companies that are allowed to run operated expeditions on Denali, and none of them were ready to take us because I was so young and because I was a girl, and on top of that, we were Indian and they had some bad experiences with Indian climbers in the past. So that was the reason we were climbing alone. So I think that itself was a very big decision to take for all of us. And I think if he didn't have confidence in my climbing, then we wouldn't have been able to make that kind of a decision. And even on Denali, on the last day, as we were getting back to the airstrip, summer had started to set in, and the entire ice field, which was 21 kilometers from Camp 1 back to the base camp, had started melting, and all the crevasses had started opening up. And we found uh, one crevasse every 10 meters. So it was very precarious to go, and usually on Denali there are flags that mark the route. But because the sun was out every day, the snow was melting, and the flags would fall down, and then with the winds in the afternoon, they'd get covered with snow. So we had no idea of how to get back to base camp. And we were stuck, and we, in fact, dialed 911. And we said, we need to get airlifted out of here because there is no way we can go back safely. And we had a member of our team who had almost fallen into a crevasse the previous day. He had fallen knee deep into a crevasse and he was hurt. So we were extremely scared, but the National Park Services there said that we can't do a rescue operation until there has been a casualty. So we were stuck there at Camp 1 with no guides, no idea of the route of how to get back. And we called a park ranger who was further up in the mountain at Camp 4, whom we had met and befriended earlier on in the expedition. And we said, look, your last flight out is in 2 days, and the glacier is starting to melt. So we really don't know what to do. So he said, you should start moving slowly, and I'll figure out if I can do something. So my dad was again very concerned there about what to do. And in fact, I think he called my mom as well, saying, we're going to start walking towards base camp. If we don't call you back by this time tomorrow, then move heaven and earth, and something has gone wrong. Uh, but I was the one who was able to tell him at that point, it's okay. We don't have any other choice but to start walking now. And we'll walk slow. The route usually takes about 4 hours. Worst come worst, we're going to reach in 10 hours, but we'll take it slow and we'll keep going. And again, similarly on Everest, during our summit push, when the weather turned bad, after he talked to our operator at base camp, he asked me, what do we do? And I could only say, what, we don't really have any other option. We can go up now. I think we can trust the weather reports and give it our best shot. So I think he has trained me enough to take such rational decisions, and I think seeing me in the mountains definitely has given him a lot more confidence in my abilities as a climber. And in fact, Everest, I think, was the first time that I climbed without him for any part of an expedition. Because right from Camp 2, whenever I was climbing up, my Sherpa and I would inevitably move ahead of the traffic. My Sherpa was very good, a very strong person, so he would unclip us from the rope and overtake climbers wherever we could. So we were not climbing together for a major chunk of our summit push. So I think that definitely helped me be confident more in climbing alone without him.
It is difficult to, the so-called let go, though it's not let go actually. Uh, I've been climbing with Kamya for a long time now. From 2016 October was the first time that we were in the mountains together. So I've been climbing for almost 8 years now, and I've seen her grow very gradually. The most important thing with young climbers is to hold them back. As we age, we get more mature, we become moderate at our outlook. We know where to take risks, where to not to take risks. But with young climbers, it's very important to hold them back from taking unwarranted risks, because that's what you know kills you on the mountain. So Kamya that way has been very level-headed in terms of decision making. Like she said, she's been the crucial part of two tough or the toughest decisions that I've taken in my life. One was to get back from the base camp to the airfield on Denali, and the second was to climb from the summit camp to the summit of Everest. Both those times, I was very indecisive because I knew the dangers, or at least I thought I know the dangers better than what she does. And that puts a lot of confusion in your mind where to walk, which way to take. But she was pretty confident, pretty determined, and that helped me take those decisions. And both of those decisions paid off. So that's the confidence that you should have with your co climber. I don't look at her as my daughter when we climb, I look at her as my co climber. And that's what we believe in, that if you partner with your child and do anything, then the child also enjoys doing what it's put through. And you get more confidence in that she can do it. So that's how I've been able to take those decisions. It was really hard decisions to take. Uh, at least on Everest, to climb at 4:30 in the morning. If you have heard of the 1996 accident on Everest, the movie was based on the incident, a real incident where we lost a lot of climbers. They breached the turnaround time on Everest. On the summit day, the turnaround time was given as 2 o'clock to them, and they breached it. And that's how most of them ended up not coming back. So those kind of things start playing on your mind, because when you start at 4:30, you don't know whether you're going to be able to reach the summit and turn back within that time. We were supposed to reach summit and turn back at 12, but he extended it till 3, telling that the weather would hold on good for that long. But it's all again predictive. So a lot of difficult decisions, but her confidence and her ability had helped me take those kind of decisions. So that's very important, and that's why it's very important to take it gradual. It's not that today I decide that I will climb Everest and in 1 or 2 years I will be there. It's not going to work that way. You need to enjoy the process rather than standing on Everest for those few minutes. The entire process from the time you think of Everest to the time that you are standing on Everest, the process is what you should enjoy. So that way she's been very cooperative, and she's been my ticket to the mountains. And to talk of Denali, as she said, we had to take the call. We did Aconcagua in 2019, 20, and we came back to India. Luckily, just 10 days before the lockdown, and then the entire world closed down. And for 2 years, I was writing to operators in the US, uh, telling them that they should take me and Kamya into a climb, and they refused. So we had to finally decide that we would go on an unguided expedition all by ourselves. So it was just me, Kamya, and two other climbers from Maharashtra, both of them Everesters. So all four of us, we formed a team and we went and climbed. And it was very heartening at the summit camp. One of the guides from the guided expedition walked up to us and they told, I think our company did a mistake by not taking you into our expedition. Otherwise, we would have had one of the youngest climbers climb Denali through our company. So yes, those kind of decisions do pay up finally. I think I missed one of your questions. I'm not able to get back.
No, it's about the 71 years since Edmund Hillary has
Yeah,
climbed, and
that's actually something that all of us should deal with, because there are a lot of articles that float around in the media saying that Everest has become a tourist place now. It's no more the Everest that Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay climbed. I would tell all of them that Everest has not become short by a single feet. It's in fact grown taller than what it was in 1953. But yes, the knowledge that has grown around Everest has increased phenomenally. We have more tools now to predict what the weather is going to be. We have videos from the previous climbs, but again, they're all just tools. You still have to lug yourself on your legs all the way up to 8848 meters.
So, based on a lot of that media, there are a lot of climbers these days who come to Everest unprepared. So, they don't know about the challenges, they don't have any prior experience climbing any peaks. They just want to do Everest and they come there because they believe that everything has improved so much that they wouldn't need to really work that much. People believe that with basic physical fitness you can climb Everest, which isn't true at all. I mean, no matter how many Sherpas you have, even if you have someone carrying your bag for you, you're still going to have to breathe the air at 8848 and walk yourself there. But I think that being said, definitely there's been a lot of improvement with weather forecasting and equipment and things of that sort, which definitely supplement your climb. But of course, it can never make up for the effort that you still have to put into.
But there's certainly something that Sir Edmund Hillary didn't have to face, which we had to face: the traffic on Everest. Because standing still on Everest is the biggest killer. You have to keep moving continuously to keep yourself warm, and standing still is the biggest killer. So even if you are prepared, if the guy ahead of you is not climbing, you're stuck. So I think world is fair.
My name is Isaac. First of all, I'm congratulations for achieving this achievement of climbing the Mount Everest. I am 27. I have seen this poster in social media. That's why I came here. First of all, thanks for the team who are posting in social media. And I'm working in IT. We always seeing the computer and starting morning with the phone and night sleeping with the phone. That's our entire day. It's go. So we first of after seeing this interview and your speech, I have planned to go for climbing one mountain. How to start, how to overcome the fear, and I shall join any group to climbing this mountain. That kind of knowledge I needed. And also you said there are many institute giving this climbing that training. So not going to any institute. Apart from the institute, I can go any climbing the mountain.
Yeah.
And
Firstly, thank you. Even if we inspire one person in any crowd to hit the outdoors, I think it's a job well done. It was in a similar talk way back in 2002 when somebody came and presented a few pictures from his mountaineering expedition that I got inspired to climb. I wanted to go and see how it is there. And my daughter has followed the legacy. And if somebody else is going to be inspired to go to the mountains, I think it's a big success for us. So thank you for even thinking about the mountains. As far as the climbing opportunities go, I think our country has made really big steps in opening up the mountains for people who want to be there. There are so many online companies which offer you various treks. So before even you go on a mountaineering course, if you want to in the future, you should first go on one of the treks that is organized in the Indian Himalayas. Most beautiful places in my mountaineering career have been below 4,000 meters. Beyond 5,500 or 6,000 meters, it's just monochrome. It's white, brown, blue, and sometimes black. That's all that you see. So you should go on a lower Himalayan trek and see how you like it. And I'm sure if the mountains want you, they will call you back. And I would still suggest that institutionalized training is the gateway to the higher mountains. It will keep you and your fellow climbers safe. Kamya was only 12 when we took permission from the Mountaineering Institute to have her go on the course. And my wife Lavanya accompanied her because she was a minor. So they would even make that kind of exceptions to allow people to come and train with them. So that's the mindset that those institutions have. Nimas is one of the institutes. I understand people who work, getting out from work for 1 month is a big issue, and that too getting out only when the vacancy is available in one of the institutes is even bigger a issue. So Nimas is an institute which offers courses in large numbers. So the waiting list is not very high. You can write to the institute and they would give you a course of your choice whenever it suits you. But yes, it's a month. Otherwise, you can go on various treks that Nepali operators provide. There are good companies in India like Boots and Crampons who also conduct some expeditions which are semi-technical, are not very highly dangerous. Novices can embark on them with decent physical fitness and get a taste of what mountaineering is. So there are a lot of resources online. You can connect with us on social media. I'll be more than happy to guide you.
Thank you. And also, while climbing the mountain, there are many villages are there, and you tell about the village people, and not only climbing the mountain, there are people you're speaking and interacting with them. How the people are there, how they interact with them, how they helping you. That kind of knowledge, that kind of share the experience.
I
So,
think you're the best one to say
yeah,
that.
especially in Nepal, I think the people were very warm and welcoming to us, and to an extent, we share a lot of culture with the Nepali people, and the traditions and the culture and the values are very similar. So they're very warm and welcoming. In fact, one of the tea houses that we stayed at, and they all have wonderful stories. One of the tea houses we stayed at, the owner of the tea house, long back had climbed up to Camp 3 on Everest. And another owner of a tea house that we met, she had traveled to many more countries than I can even count and think of at this instance. So they all have wonderful stories, and I think that is also a huge part of mountaineering, that you get to meet so many different people and learn about their stories. And in general, the Sherpa community, specifically in Nepal, are extremely important, and they're the most important people to keep us safe when we're climbing in the Himalayas, even in India or in Nepal. And I think they're doing a great service. Without them, climbing in the Himalayas would not be possible for anyone like us. So, yeah, they're some of the best people that I've met in the mountaineering community.
And I think any human interaction is reflection of yourself. How you behave and how you interact with people is what determines how they are going to interact back with you. We have had beautiful experiences even as far away as Argentina. We were actually fighting a court case in the Argentinian family court to get a permit to climb the peak, and the judge was actually antagonized as to why she had to deal with this kind of a case, and she would shuttle us every day with a new requirement. One day she would say, go and get me some report from a child cardiologist. The next day she would say, okay, get me report from a child psychologist that she's climbing out of her own wheel and I'm not forcing her into it. One day she would say, go and get a report from a sports medicine specialist. And we ended up going to a sports medicine specialist. He was the medico of the Argentinian women's hockey team. We all understand the Argentinian teams in hockey are one of the world's best. And he was the medico of the women's hockey team of Argentina. And when we went and met him, he heard Kamya's plight. And he told, I think I know exactly what it means for somebody like you to climb in your country. I come to India every year and train the women's hockey, junior women's hockey team of India. We have so many amazing players, but we find it difficult to get them out of their house in Chhattisgarh and places like that. So we go speak to their parents and let them play hockey.
In the national
So
team.
I know how important it is for you to climb, because what you do, when the message spreads in your country, there would be many more such people who dream, come, do things which are bigger than their life. And he put Kamya on the media in Argentina. So Kamya was there on TV in the small town of Mendoza, and we would walk on the streets of Mendoza, and people would recognize us. Maybe because of her color, but people would still recognize us and tell, okay, you are the small girl who's trying to climb a mountain, and our government is not yet giving you permission. We pray to God that the government gives you permission fast, and that actually paid off. So that's the kind of interactions that we have seen, and so it's absolutely a reflection of what you're doing and what you are interacting with people. Even on the mountain, when we went and came down to base camp, we were given a new guide by the company, and the guide climbed with us. He used to keep feeding a specific tea to Kamya, and he used to keep telling, this is mystic tea, drink it and you will climb. And he wouldn't speak very good English. He would just speak broken English, and that's the only thing probably he spoke to her in the entire climb. And when we came back after the summit, we had learned that he had fallen from Aconcagua 2 years before and had got paralyzed. And this was his first climb after his paralysis. So he had something to prove to himself. And that's how Kamya, who was refused to be taken on top by a few guides, somebody else came as a savior and ended up taking her to the summit and claimed his own glory in doing so. So it's always beautiful to interact with people. The mountain people are amazing.
One quick question. Apart from your parents, who is your inspiration?
I think there are a lot of mountaineers, like my dad said, Captain M.S. Kohli, who is the leader of the first successful Indian Everest expedition. We had the opportunity to meet him before going to Mount Everest. And a lot of the things that he said really stood out to me, and there are things that I remember even now when we're climbing. So there's a lot of legendary mountaineers that we've had the opportunity to meet, and I think all of them are an inspiration to keep going and keep climbing.
And as a parting words, I would say all of us don't have to climb Everest. All that we have to climb is our own Everest in our own hearts. So I'm sure Kamya's journey would surely, I'm sure all of you are already well established and are doing great in your own fields in life, but it's for you to spread the good word so that others also come to know, and there are small children who can start to dream big in our country. Thank you.
I really think both of them deserve a standing ovation. Please. My personal take, there are a couple of P's that I would like to talk about.
The first is, of course, their passion. Both of them share such a passion for this, and nothing can really move without the passion that they have. They backed up the passion with a lot of patience, perseverance, and I think Kamya is lucky to add another P, parents. And with all these P's, she's reached the pinnacle, the last P. And I pray to the Almighty that give her more and more success and more success to the parents, so that she reaches greater heights as she goes forward in her adventure of life. Thank you. Thank you, Kamya.
You've been an inspiration. And to just bring you up to speed on what we're going to
Have in the next few days, we have another mountaineer right amongst us, and she's going to talk to us on her journey. And this is on November 9th. So, the gentleman who wanted to get some tips right here in Chennai, there are people who go on treks, who go on Himalayan expeditions. So, you can definitely meet up with them and then get tips. On October 26th, we have Dr. Garia Ali speaking on her book on Chennai. and that is likely to be, it's a very human interest kind of a book. I wish all of you could come then. Then we have a woman entrepreneur, Kalpana Shankar, who runs one of the biggest NGOs in India now. So it would be an interesting topic where I invite all of you to come. We have a movie on November 16th, Dr. Mohan Agashe. And it's a very celebrated artist, and the movie is supposed to be a very moving experience. I wish most of you could come. And then we have a book launch on the November 30th. Author is Sri Ram Balasubramaniam. So we have a series of events coming up, but today our hero and heroine are Kamya and her father, and of course her mother. So we thank them for having come down and spoken to us. I'm sure we will be seeing more successes and more occasions to call them over, and we hope you accept our invitation to come down. Thank you so much.